All right.
Welcome to the Waiver Wired podcast, everybody. I'm Jen Piacenti, joined by Eddie Spaghetti, and we are super excited about today's episode for so many reasons. First of all, if you've listened to the past few episodes, you know we've been previewing by position, but we divided our wide receiver episode into two separate episodes because this is my favorite part of fantasy drafts. You're going to learn a little bit about what's going on in my head, and it's this mid to late round wide receiver targets. I absolutely love them. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And great news, guys. James Rode Rodriguez is going to join the pod today. So get ready. We're going to have some fun, spicy talk with Rode. Super excited. But before we do that, Eddie, how was your week? Can I just say, Kenny Galladay? I don't want to start off too negative, but that guy had more targets in the end zone than any other wide receiver without recording a touchdown. And then he played on Sunday and he didn't have a catch, but worse, he didn't have a target in 21 snaps. I don't want to start on a down note, but it is the wide receiver episode. How are you feeling watching this?
I'm so glad you did bring him up because for my maybe overvalued or I don't love where they're being drafted players, I did want to add a giant to that list, and there was two in mind, and one of them is Kenny Galladay. Spoiler alert! And you're right, Jen. I mean, not only does he have to prove himself after a down year, after with a huge contract, and not to be so hard on him because he doesn't have to be maybe what he was in Detroit because the Giants do have some pretty good depth at receiver. But if combining Daniel Jones's poor play as of late and then his injury concerns, Kenny Galladay, it may not be a good idea to draft him when you still have Sterling Shepard who's back and is healthy. Kadarius Toney may be healthy. They drafted Wan'Dale Robinson. By the way, they still have Darius Slayton, and they have a guy named Saquon Barkley in the backfield who does catch passes. So a lot of mouths to feed, injury concerns, all that. So it could be a tough one for Kenny Galladay.
Let's look at some news before we jump into more wide receiver talk. Tom Brady returned to the Bucs. I don't know. Was he on The Masked Singer? Was he not?
We're going to find out soon. We recorded before with Hench and Dave, and I was shocked because I was looking at the Bucs schedule, and I was like, man, I love, Brady's back. I really like Mike Evans a lot, too, which we talked about last week. And it's funny that Dave and Hench both think the Saints actually could win the division. Brady's mind may be elsewhere because that's why he missed time. He's 45. Eventually, he probably has to fall off the cliff. No Bruce Arians, all that kind of stuff. But
Michael Thomas. Do I need to have them on here for an expose? Because I have feelings.
Doesn't Michael Thomas, isn't he still dealing, according to the beat, he's like a soft tissue injury again? I just feel like he's going to have constantly nagging injuries.
In his head.
Yeah.
That's what he's got. Whatever. Anyway, okay, interesting. So they don't have faith in Brady. They think he's distracted. Yeah. I'm going to take the other side of that and say that there is no way that Tom Brady isn't going to leave on a high note, right?
Totally.
So that means he either has to retire in the next few weeks or he has to get very serious because there's no way he's going to fizzle out. He just won't. He's Tom Brady.
I'm with you.
Jameis Winston and crew with backups of Ian Book beaming Tom Brady. I don't see it. I get it. It's a spicy take. Maybe it's Carolina Reaper hot, even, if I'm going to compare it to Buffalo Wild Wings sauce, which is what we like to do on this program because we do love our Buffalo Wild Wings.
Oh, we do love it. But yeah, look at their Bucs schedule and tell me if you can't find 12 wins. I just think it's easy over 11.5. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Baker Mayfield officially the starter for the Panthers. No big surprise. We were planning on that. I do think it gives very slight upgrades to DJ Moore, guys like that. But, no shocker there. Matt Corral, that was unfortunate. Gus Edwards missed the first 4 games to the Ravens. So we know it's J.K. Dobbins is supposed to be the guy, but should he get off to a slow start? There's lots of questions there about what could be happening next. And a lot of people have posited that maybe the Ravens is a place for Kenyon Drake to land.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought about that?
Well, I believe there's an injury to Gus Edwards, so that makes kind of sense there. J.K. Dobbins obviously was dealing with an injury. We know, Lamar Jackson's going to run the ball like crazy, so I don't want to get too crowded of a backfield because I do like Dobbins. I think he will be effective if healthy, especially because you don't look at the Ravens as a very high passing team. I just think getting Kenyon Drake, that just muddles it up. So for the Ravens, they want him. They probably need depth, but for us fantasy players, drafting their running backs is going to be a tough one.
Seahawks are still not announcing who their quarterback is. I was taking a look today at the props for the Seahawks, and they're just depressing.
Yeah.
They're just like, DK Metcalf over 5 touchdowns, over 900 yards. I mean, and guys, just as a point, of course, Vegas is not always right, but a lot of times they do have insight and they have insider information, and they're Vegas for a reason. They don't do this to not make money. They're very, very sharp. And when you see those numbers, if you're debating about a fantasy football wide receiver, sometimes that's a little bit of a cheat code. Be like, I'm worried about DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Maybe I should go check where, FanDuel has the receiving yards prop. How many catches do they think maybe they'll get? What do they find to be a reasonable number where they won't lose too much money because people will take this bet? So sometimes it's not that encouraging.
No, I mean, the few takeaways from this is, number one, the Jimmy G sweepstakes, if you can call it that. I mean, I've seen recently them linking him to the Seahawks. I think from the Seahawks perspective, and for Jimmy G's too, but it makes zero sense for him to go there because they don't want a guy who could potentially win you games. They want to lose, they want to tank, they want to be able to draft CJ Stroud or Bryce Young in the offseason. So I don't think Jimmy G going there is going to help. Plus, he's going to make matters worse for himself because he's not going to have the best possible season to get him to that next contract. And in terms of the Seahawks, I mean, it just, to me, this reeks of, it seems like Drew Lock missed some time. I was dealing with COVID, and he hasn't really impressed. And from the sense of what I've read and a lot of Pete Carroll's statements on the matter is that he really wanted Lock to win this job. And I feel like Geno Smith is just kind of like there, and has maybe a high floor, but an extremely low ceiling, and they're going to be forced to be like, all right, Geno, I guess you win the job because Drew Lock showed us absolutely nothing. So it's pretty bleak times in Seattle.
It is pretty bleak times in Seattle. Jerry Jones says Michael Gallup should be back within the first 4 weeks of the season. Does this pour any cold water on Jalen Tolbert? We'll talk a little about Jalen later, I'm sure, when we get there for late round receivers. Very interesting there. I'm trying to think if there's any other big. I mean, it's kind of been a slow news week. Yeah. Considering how close we are. Oh, the offensive tag Tyron Smith for the Cowboys. That is no bueno. I am not happy about that.
It seems like you guys get good news with, Gallup potentially returning back in between weeks 1 and 4, and then now you lose Tyron Smith. Not to make light of it, because I know obviously a devastating injury. When healthy, he's one of the best. But I almost feel like he misses so much time, you could pencil it in.
Playing like that.
So it's like, well, he's going to miss probably a couple games anyway. So now you're just getting out ahead of it. And it's like you could, maybe you could pick up, I know Eric Fisher's a name that's been thrown around. Maybe they make a trade because the Cowboys should win the division. So they should be in win now mode. So, if it's one of those things where they have to pick up somebody and you knew you're only going to get half a season from Tyron Smith anyway, maybe not like a crushing blow to the Cowboys. And as much as I dislike the Cowboys, obviously never want to see a team just be devastated by injuries, so it's a tough one, but I think you could ask him to manage.
I was really proud of Jerry this week when he said that we're good to OBJ. I mean, sorry. Basically saying we're going to stick with our guys to Antonio Brown.
Yeah.
Please, I'm sorry. Sorry, OBJ. Forgive me. The Hard Knocks this week. What'd you think?
Is another good one. I mean, I still love this season. It's one of my favorites in a while. Dan Campbell is just incredible, and how he's. I read something that he wants people to think that he's like this dumb guy who just like chews dip and whatever, and he's going to be out coached, but he seems to know what is going on. He's a smart guy. I thought the highlight was Deuce Staley screaming at his running backs with no voice. It seemed like that, they needed that win in the preseason game. They lost, 6 straight games, so they had to get one. I think the one biggest question I have, though, I wonder, because I know it's his third time being on it, Jared Goff, but is he able to ask to not be like highlighted in the show, or he just like, or is HBO just like bored of him? Because I kind of want to see more of Jared Goff. I think his story is very interesting. Obviously being shipped out, California kid, go to school at Cal Berkeley, quarterback in the Rams, very high draft pick, and then he gets, shipped off to Detroit, and he's part of this organization that's like, I don't know if they're in a rebuild or they're just, the cellar dweller, or maybe not with the Bears, but like, I think his storyline is very interesting, and there's nothing to do with Jared Goff.
I don't know. Maybe he doesn't want to be featured, or maybe it's not interesting. Maybe there's something about it that isn't. I kind of feel like there's still an episode coming. There's 2 more left, right?
Yes.
Because I've been sitting here waiting for the Jared Goff as well. thinking, because I like to write it up over at SI the next day, like whatever interesting take that I think we can pull from it for fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. It's a really good question. One thing I did look at this week was, Dan Campbell's clearly the star of this series, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, Dan Campbell. So I went up and looked up Dan Campbell's stats if he were a fantasy player. He would have been like the worst fantasy player of all time. You never ever would have drafted him. And I was kind of thinking, like, can you imagine if Dan Campbell were coaching Dan Campbell? I'd like to see it.
He was a Giant and a Cowboy, so we're used to him. But he's awesome.
Lions.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. But it's good stuff. All right, you guys have been waiting for this. The whole reason you tuned into Waiver Wired today was for this segment. And I am thrilled to welcome in star of ABC's A Million Little Things. Or you may have seen him on Psych, or maybe you just saw him in a really weird porn star mustache video the other day on Twitter. That's basically how I know him, It is James Rode Rodriguez. Rode, what's going on, man?
I missed the porn stash, obviously.
Obviously, me too.
It's, I don't know, I can't remember the last time I felt that comfortable in my own skin. So here I am back to pretending and putting on, the face that people think they know, but don't actually know.
So I'm so glad you're here today because, there is what we think we know and then who you really are. And one thing that people probably don't know about you is that you're actually a bit of a shark yourself. You play fantasy football, but you actually kind of play it at a high level. You play in the high stakes leagues. And my understanding is, all humility aside, that you're pretty good.
I've had my moments. The last time I had one playing high stakes fantasy football was, I guess, maybe 2 years ago in the NFFC cut line format, which I enjoy because it's best ball for like the first, 10 weeks of the season or something. So you don't really have to think about it. And I finished, I made it to the top of the final table, to use a poker analogy. So I think going into the last week, I was playing for like $100,000 or something fun like that. Yeah,
that is a lot of fun.
If you're wondering how I finished of the 12,
yes.
The answer is 12th. I finished 12th out of 12, and it was the 6 touchdown Alvin Kamara Christmas game.
Oh, I got killed in that week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just unfair. That was just this. That's kind of like, there's luck and there's skill, and there's a certain point in this game where you just have to say, look, if Alvin Kamara is going to have 5, 6, 7, 10 touchdowns, I just can't do anything about that. And it's really hard to let that go when there's $100,000 on the line.
It was tough because, that's a huge tournament. And I think of the 12 of us that got to the final there, I think maybe 7 of the teams had Kamara. And it was like that. It was that game that like kicked off the week. So it was like all the mystery was gone. It was like, 5 of us knew we were done.
It was over. Yeah.
We didn't bother checking our teams on Sunday.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember that week. It was awful.
But yeah, it's been mostly me getting my behind kicked by these high stakes guys because and girls, they just have so much time and acumen, and a lot of them do it professionally. And I can't really keep up anymore, but I still enjoy it. I enjoy feeling like I'm a part of something. And now that we've managed to add a charitable element, I'm back in. I'm back.
Yeah.
My interest is in. I'm game on.
So I want to talk a little bit about the charitable element. So we have a lot of degenerates that listen to our podcast. We're very proud of it. In fact, and actually, I should say, I'm going to pat ourselves on the back, Eddie. Eddie and I took 3rd place in the NFFC postseason last year.
Yep.
Now, here's our regret. Ready? So I decided, hey, we need content for our podcast, and let's tell everyone to play postseason leagues because we're all addicts and we want everyone else to be addicted too. Why do you have to stop playing during the season? So I went and I was like, I'll just throw $40 into this league, right? Because it's $40 and we'll build the team on the pod. And we built it and we moved along. And then as the weeks kept going on, we were like, oh my God, like we might win this. Anyway, long story short, we ended up winning 3rd place, and it was like $5,000. And all we were was mad at ourselves that I was mad at myself that I didn't pay the $200 entry fee because we would have won like 40 grand. We would have been taken second in that league, not third.
Yeah.
Points. So anyway, that's our sad story, or not so sad story.
Believe in yourselves.
I know.
Well, Jen, I have to say, too, the best part about that roster, I think there was like maybe 2 players. There was like a Cardinals player and like a Raiders player that we were like going back and forth on. We pretty much had like our lineups were like in lockstep completely. So, I mean, that was a total team effort. We were, smart on the ball right from the beginning there. People listen to this for the regular season, but again, like I said, keep listening postseason. That's when me and Jen really shine.
But regular season, I want to talk a little bit about our charitable effort, Rode. So we've teamed up with NFFC. Thank you so much for inviting me to fight cancer. #SackCancer. Can you tell everybody a little bit about how they can get involved? Because I think there's a lot of people watching this right now that are going to immediately jump in.
Yeah, this is our 3rd year, and it's gotten bigger each year, which is a good sign. It's a testament both to Greg and Tom, who run the NFFC, and also their players who have gotten behind this and supported it. But it's the primetime main event that they have over there. And the first year it was just me and the Miz, and we co-managed the team and got absolutely clobbered, but still managed to raise a decent chunk of money for the V Foundation and Connor's Cure, which is specifically pediatric cancer research. Then last year we upped the ante. There were 4 of us. We added Kofi Kingston and Mike Fabiano, and Fabs actually won his league. And if he hadn't had some unfortunate injuries, he was looking pretty good for the overall. So we got a little extra attention, and we raised twice as much as we did the first year. And now we're heading into season 3. There are 6 of us, including you. You are one of our new recruits, along with newly crowned ESPN fantasy girl Liz Loza, adding some real intelligence to the crew with you. And we'll be spread out 6 separate primetime leagues. This is their main event. This is their biggest prize. It's $250,000. They're 12-team leagues. They're high stakes. So you're already having to pay $1,750 to have a team. And we're saying, hey, kick in a little extra and you can play against us, so that before the season even starts, we've already raised, X amount of money. And then we're obviously playing for the V Foundation. And we've also added an additional prize this year for the highest scoring team amongst our 6 leagues. And that's going to be 2 tickets to both nights of WrestleMania 2023.
I wonder if we could also hook them up with a little private backstage tour with Megan Morant. We're going to have to talk to her.
Look, start twisting, start turning. Do it.
We know her. She's a friend of the show. So, all right. And I'm really into this. And we maybe weren't specific enough when we say if James wins, if I win, we each if we win our leagues. So now, since we're 6 leagues, there's 6 of us that could each win our leagues. We will donate all those proceeds to the V Foundation and Connor's Cure. And then we'll also go into the overall tournament for the overall grand prize. And we will also, if we win the overall grand prize, that means $250,000 will be going to the V Foundation and Connor's Cure. And I really can't think of a better way to take something that we love so much, that's so much fun, and just use it for good.
It's such a huge community, and it seems like it gets bigger every year. I owe most of the idea and the incentive to Scott Fish, because it was the fishbowl that got me thinking, like, how can we do this but specifically target people that we know have some dough? Like, how do we go just point straight at the people with the disposable income to go after high stakes leagues and remind them that they're in a position, to be philanthropic as well.
And interestingly, a lot of those players have already come forward and offered to also donate a portion of their winnings should they win. So not just making the donation to join the league, but also donate a part of their winnings. And I think that's incredible.
It's pretty awesome. It warms my heart. It makes me feel good about being part of the fantasy football community. And now it's up to us, Jen. Because all we got to do is beat 11 people. If we each win our league, like, it's basically 50 grand. We're just handing 50 grand to the V Foundation.
So I'm pretty confident I can do it, but I want to say, like, I was working on my trash talk video earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm not so good at the trash talk. So I was wondering if maybe you could give me a few pointers.
I think you just have to throw discord and decorum out the window. Like you can't ride the line of like, well, I want to trash talk, but I don't want to be offensive. No, you just have to throw it out. You have to come at them hard, get the blood going, make them take notice. That's the worst that you can happen is that you say all those things and then you lose. That's what I've done for the last 10 years in that organization. So yeah, look, I'm sitting here fine. Nobody comes for me. But yeah, you just gotta stick it to them and say things that are disarming and uncomfortable. Really put them on their backsides, and then maybe they won't be thinking clearly during your draft.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you want them off their game because they're really, really good players, and it's very rare that you go into one of those drafts knowing something that the other 11 people you're drafting against don't already know, and that's just the truth of the matter.
That's true. And that's why for this episode, when we're breaking down the wide receivers as we go along, we're using the NFC rankings because they're a little bit sharper than what you're going to see on an ESPN or even an Underdog is a little bit sharper than what you're going to see on an ESPN or a Yahoo, because you're going to see the people that kind of like really nerd out about this a little bit more than a family league or an office league. Sure. So yeah, I agree about the NFC. Now I got to ask you just a couple of questions just about you. Like, who's your football team? Who do you root for?
I was raised in San Antonio, Texas, amongst a sea and family of diehard, obnoxious Dallas Cowboy fans. So I, of course, opted to be a Houston Oilers fan so that I could stand all alone.
That makes sense.
And be tortured by everyone I was related to. And then when the team moved, because I had no allegiance whatsoever to the city of Houston, I moved with them, which makes me a diehard Tennessee Titan fan. And that's what I have been for most of my adult life.
James, I got to ask you, I brought the Titans, the AFC South, probably a 2-horse race. It's you guys and it's the Colts. So these three things kind of pop into my head with the Titans, and I want to see what your take is. Which do you think is the least likely to happen? Number one, obviously drafting Malik Willis, the belief in Ryan Tannehill, can he get it done? Is it Derrick Henry? A lot of hits, a lot of miles. Is he going to maybe fall off that, proverbial cliff that running backs always do around his age? Or is it the replacement of A.J. Brown? I know you guys brought in Robert Woods. Which do you feel the most confident in and not happening, and which it kind of concerns you in this probably 2-horse race to win the division?
I think Tannehill has a lot to prove after last season, after the last couple postseasons, and I suspect he has enough experience and enough left in the tank to sort of bounce back so that we're not sitting there worrying about Ryan Tannehill this season. He's also been put on notice by the drafting of Malik. So I'm not terribly worried about Ryan. I would say if they manage the Kings' load a little bit, he also has a lot to prove because there's a lot of naysayers out there all of a sudden, even though he's only really had one injury in his career. I don't think you want to make a guy like Derrick Henry mad. I don't think you want to give him bulletin board material. So maybe it's me being a homer, but I'm not.
No, I think you're right. Did you see that video that came out today from Yahoo Fantasy?
Yeah.
You don't want to be canceled. I was kind of like, give me all the Henry. I bought it. Just like I bought the Amon-Ra St. Brown on Hard Knocks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not too worried about Derrick. So I guess the answer to your question would be C, which is losing AJ. Even though he wasn't a prototypical number one because we were such a run-heavy offense, when he was out there, he took a lot of attention from secondary. And, he's a guy that could make plays when the ball's in his hands. And we've replaced him with a guy coming off a torn ACL and a rookie. So that's where my concern lies, for sure.
And a rookie that doesn't seem to be being used the way we all expected him to so far in preseason. So we're all a little like, okay.
What are they doing? Is that smokescreen stuff? Like,
I hope so.
They don't want people to know what they've got with him, and they want to unleash him. I hope
so too, because I kind of had him as like my sleeper pick for rookie of the year. But we'll see. These are These are things that are of a long ways to go. Did I read correctly that you also play fantasy baseball?
I'm a fantasy nerd and have been since the late 90s. I have a home league that does baseball, basketball, and football that started in 1999. My first major foray into high stakes was baseball in the NFFC.
Me too.
And I came in my first year and finished in the top 10 and thought, I really am one of the best fantasy players in the world. I've been talking so much trash. I tested my skills at the highest level, and I am completely validated. And that's the last time I even sniffed in the NFFC baseball main event. That's for sure. I'll never forget. That was the year that it was Zach Greinke's rookie year. Mm-hmm. So I got him in like the 15th. And I got Felix Hernandez in like the 10th, and together, I just rode those two horses all the way to the top 10, which never happens. That you not only hit on one, but hit on two. Like, it was crazy. But that's basically what you have to do to be a factor in those giant tournaments, which, it raises an interesting strategy question for us, because there's a difference between playing to beat 11 people and playing to win a giant tournament. And one advantage we might have in the primetime event is that there are a bunch of sharks who are after that 250, and they draft somewhat accordingly, knowing
very contrarian lineups, hoping they get that one single piece.
Now, we could go in rather conservatively and say, you know what? Let me just go after that $7,000 league prize and just beat these 11 people. And that would probably change our strategy a little bit, because we don't have to have that lottery ticket. We just have to have a team that we know is solid enough, minus injuries, that will be there at the end,
It's a really good point, because we would rather donate $7,000 to win our league than potentially miss out on that because we thought we could get 250. The odds are much trickier. And you're right, people will start building contrarian lineups, which could give us an advantage because they're just thinking about getting the kicker like Evan McPherson in the postseason. We totally did that. And that getting them all the way there. So that's
food for thought.
That is a really good deep thought. So we should discuss that with everyone. This is the wide receiver episode. Yep. And I was wondering, how do you like to draft wide receivers? And do you have any like mid to late round targets that you're kind of looking at this year?
I was driving the Russell Gage train until they signed Julio. That was annoying, especially as a Titans fan, because there's part of me that's just like, doesn't matter. He's done. Like, trust me, guys, he's done. But then I'm like, yeah, but watch Julio go play with Tom Brady in some sort of career renaissance. Like the year after he busted for us, and basically make Russell Gage irrelevant. So I think I have to back off the Russell Gage hype a little bit. But he was going to be my guy. I think I took him in the fishbowl, but because that was pre Julio. I mean, if you want to go deeper sleepers, I think Josh Palmer is an interesting name because Justin Herbert's going to throw the ball a million times, and Mike Williams gets hurt like clockwork every year. And then you've got a guy who you could plug in and who's like a legit wide receiver too. So, you're not really drafting him for week one, but you're drafting him knowing that at some point he's probably going to help your team. Who else is sneaky out there? You know what? I'll pose it to you two. Like, I don't know exactly what to make of Darnell Mooney this season. Because the reports are obviously that he's the best looking thing in camp, but to be the best looking thing in Bears camp, that's not the endorsement that you're really looking for in terms of being like a fantasy impact guy. So I don't know. I don't know what to do with him.
It's such a great question, and he's come around a few times whenever I'm on a draft pick and he's there, and there's no reason why I should kind of avoid him, because you're right. He had the biggest target share. Second most targets was Cole Kmet, right? Cole Kmet actually had a much better catch rate than Darnell Mooney, which is a little concerning, right? Because
Yeah.
okay, and you look at the Bears injury reports and like nobody's even there. I mean, there's nobody there but Darnell Mooney. Like nobody's there. But for some reason, I still just feel a little gross about it. I don't have as much faith in Justin Fields as others. So yeah, is he the wide receiver one? Yeah, but you're right. I can't get excited about it.
I think to feel good about it, you'd have to take him after he's going. I think if you want to get him, you're basically saying he's my wide receiver too, and I don't think 100%. That he is that. So
yeah,
we have to pass on Darnell.
What do you think about George Pickens? Have you heard all this George Pickens talk? Because
a lot of good. I mean, I don't know what to do with the Steelers either because we don't even know who's playing quarterback. I mean, it'll be Trubisky, I'm sure, initially, but we've seen how bad that guy can be. So I can't imagine that he'll have a long leash. And then we're going to ride with a rookie. I mean, I don't know.
So let me ask you this, because I think this is really interesting. So Pickens has been going up the draft boards because everybody's been talking about how great he looks and that there's a potential that he could leapfrog Chase Claypool. Well, right now, Chase Claypool is going at pick 110 and George Pickens is going at pick 117, which means you cannot get both.
Right.
If you had to pick, who would you take the shot on? Claypool or Pickens?
I'd take the shot on Pickens just because Claypool's also, I don't know, he's kind of a knucklehead too. I feel like he gets in his own way. He does stupid stuff. Like I try to avoid guys like that just because I can't be having dudes, get put in the doghouse for dumb reasons in the middle of my fantasy season. It's not really about. It's not about
draft Antonio Brown.
Not about them or their growth as men. It's about my fantasy squad, right? It's about what I need from them. And I didn't sign up so that so that they could come of age. That they can do that on their own time. So, I haven't heard anything like that about Pickens, so I'd probably take the flyer on Pickens.
The shot on Pickens. I love it. Yeah. We appreciate you spending time with us today. I know you're probably very, very busy, but I want to encourage everybody to, of course, follow Renee on Twitter, but more importantly, to go over to NFFC. What is the actual address?
PlayNFFC.com/sackcancer. And the good news is you don't have to be an obnoxiously wealthy fantasy football guru to hit that link and just throw a little money at a great cause. There's a donation button there. There's information about Connor's Cure and the V Foundation. If you're just looking for a nice place to stash $5 or $10, it's just a good cause all around, and you don't have to know anything about football or what.
I have a feeling it's good karma towards winning your league too if you do it. Just $5 or $10. It's
absolutely
putting a little bit in the karma jar.
It all adds up, and every penny goes to pediatric cancer research. So
it does. So you guys join us at the NFFC. Thank you so much, and I look forward to playing this out with you this year, and I hope we raise a ton of money. And I'm sure that all of us.
Very excited to have you on board. Looking forward to watching you perform very well. I'm sure you'll do better than I do. And we'll keep it up. We'll keep track of how we're doing all season long. Eddie, pleasure, man.
Great meeting you too, James. Best luck to you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Renee.
Bye.
He's the best.
That was awesome. It was great stuff. I mean, he's got to be excited as a Titans fan. Like I said before, it's probably a 2-horse race in that division. And as long as, the guys stay healthy, that's a solid squad there. And then in terms of fantasy, I mean, he knows his stuff clearly. Deep round receiver talk. That's a good guy to have in the league.
I mean, here's the thing. Can we talk to Sal? Can we get Rode as our third host?
I know, right?
The three of us? Let's do it. Maybe we can get Miz in here too. Yeah, so I've never met the Miz, by the way, who I know is a friend of the network. So I'm really looking forward to trash talking him as well. Super excited. We do have some questions coming in from listeners, so let's grab them right now while we're at it before we jump into the wide receivers.
Sure. We have Jeff Bruce from YouTube. Thanks, Jeff, for listening and commenting. A reminder, everyone, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, you could all just follow Extra Points and then comment through there. We'll show them live. And then Twitter, we have a couple on Twitter as well. I'll read those to you. But Jeff's drafting in 2 hours, so he wants to know what the thoughts are on the rookies like Moore, Olave, and Dubes.
Dubs. So Dubs is rocketing up the boards because he caught a touchdown in both preseason games, and Aaron Rodgers was recently said that there would be a different standard for him, and he's starting from a higher standard. That being said, I've seen Aaron Rodgers kind of like move his affections all around the field, just like he does with his girlfriends. So, it might be Alan Lazard, it might be Sammy Watkins, it might be Randall Cobb. And so I like them, but only if they're very late. They're starting to go a little high. Olave is probably my favorite of the three. He's the one I would probably take first because and Michael Thomas has already got a hamstring injury. He is in line to actually get work for you right away. Sky Moore, also possible, but same thing with Patrick Mahomes, right? So many guys, MVS, Juju, Travis Kelce, so many options. So my favorite is Olave as far as getting production right away.
All right, we have another question coming through on Twitter. Looks like it's from Dasluri. He's asking you, Eli Mitchell in the 8th or Javonte Williams at the tail end of the 3rd in PPR?
If you can get Javonte Williams at the tail end of the 3rd, that's pretty awesome. You have to pick. So this is a keeper question, I'm guessing.
Yes, it seems like his follow-up was Javonte in the tail end of the 3rd, Mitchell in the 8th for carryover. So yeah, I'm guessing it is keeper.
I think I would go with Javonte here. There's even more value with Eli Mitchell, but just because he's a little beat up right now and because it can go to more of a committee, I would go with Javonte there. He's going in the 2nd round for most people.
And the last question wasn't really a question; it was just a comment from my girlfriend Jada, who says she's a huge fan of a Million Little Things, the show that James is in. I have seen quite a few episodes of those, so should have brought that up to James before. But too much important fantasy football talk. So
too much important fantasy football talk. That's right. Speaking of important fantasy football talk, let's get to it. Let's break down these wide receivers. Like I said, this is my favorite part of the draft. The way that I like to build my draft is I like to start with the running backs when I can, because I feel like there's so much value when we start coming around the 3rd round for wide receivers. Oh, apparently ESPN's reminding me to set a lineup or a draft. By the way, I'm in so many drafts and things right now. I can't.
I'm like afraid to ask what the number is. I feel like the number is absurd.
It's too many.
Yeah,
That's
I'm sure.
the answer. I just finished one for CBS. Okay, so we rounded out with Gabe Davis last week, and we're going to pick up in round 3 in our 3rd tier, which starts with Jerry Jeudy, as if it's a wide receiver 3. Right, because that's where they're going. Jerry Jeudy's going off the board as around 26th wide receiver. What are your feelings? And by the way, this is great. This is right ahead of Darnell Mooney, right? Which was what Rode was just talking about. Of these two, who would you rather take the shot on? Jerry Jeudy, Darnell Mooney?
I mean, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's Jeudy. You're combining a premier talent with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, a great deep ball thrower. And obviously, the loss of Tim Patrick is a blow to the Broncos, but there's enough guys there to help pick up the slack. And obviously, Jerry Jeudy is a guy they want to be the premier, receiver in their offense. It's Mooney. It's actually exactly what James said. It's like if he slides in a draft, take him. Do not go and reach for a guy like Darnell Mooney. So I'm all for Jeudy over Mooney.
It's so hard because I get here and I'm gonna have the debate. Do I want a floor or do I want a ceiling? Because I do think Darnell Mooney is going to get you a certain floor because he is going to be the clear number 1. Jerry Jeudy could be massive, and who knows? We could have a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase situation where they're both better. But it's really tricky because sometimes what I like to do is in the beginning of my draft, just get that floor. So I know I have these minimum points no matter what. And maybe they're not that flashy, but I'm just trying to win each week, right? I don't want anyone that's going to zero out. And I don't think Darnell Mooney's ever going to zero out. I don't really think Jerry Jeudy will either, but it's a tricky call. They're going back to back, both of them. So we've talked about, Darnell Mooney's the clear number 1. So if you want a wide receiver 1, he's a la Brandon Cooks, if you will, right? Maybe it's not an exciting situation, but they've got to go to him. Jerry Jeudy, incredible ceiling with Russell Wilson being there. So, I think the value is fair for both. It's how you want to play. Chris Godwin has fallen behind these guys because we don't know when he's going to play. So this has to do with how many games he might play and if he gets off to a slow start. But I'm definitely taking him there. I would rather take him there than Juju Smith-Schuster, who's going right after him. What about you?
Ooh, that That's a tough one. I think yes, the length of the injury obviously is the cause of concern. If we knew Godwin was going to be, we knew a date he was coming back. I think that would change a lot of people's drafts. Juju, I feel like somebody in Kansas City is going to have to get the targets, and I just feel like Juju may be that guy. But it's like, what would you rather have? Let's just say, 10 to 12 games of a healthy Chris Godwin, or do you want, 16, 17 games of Juju, who hasn't really lit up the world the last few seasons? And that's a tough one for me.
I'm not worried about him not lighting up the world the last few seasons. I'm worried about two things. One, exactly what Renee was talking about, if he's a head case.
Sure.
Right? And two, from week to week, I mean, what if you know how this works. Mm-hmm. Sammy Watkins had big weeks. Mecole Hardman had big weeks. What if Juju's just another one of those guys?
Well,
I'm worried about.
Juju's a different type. He's more of the possession receiver. He's not like the burn down the field speed kind of guy like Sammy Watkins or Mecole Hardman. They want Mecole Hardman to become like a Tyreek Hill 2.0. The one thing that kind of scares me with Chris Godwin is Tampa did bring in a lot of receivers. I wonder if they think or they know how severe the injury is, and maybe they're not letting that on. So that's kind of been in the back of my head. So if you buy into that, maybe Juju's the way to go. I think you're talking about ceiling versus floor. When Godwin is back and he's fully healthy, I mean, his ceiling is going to be immensely higher.
Rashad Bateman is next up. That is, I think he's essentially going to be really the wide receiver 2, because Mark Andrews will be number 1, sure, in my opinion. But they have Lamar Jackson's passing yards prop set at 3,500.5. So let's think about that. He has never passed for more than 30. That's like 3,150 in 2019. And now they're setting it at 3,500 and a half. If it's true that he's really going to pass that much, Mark Andrews can't be much better than he was. Okay. 1,000 yards went out of town with Hollywood Brown. Maybe Rashad Bateman is a decent value here as the wide receiver 30 off the board.
The other funny thing about Lamar Jackson's total is that his rush total is like over 900 yards for the season. So I'm shocked that his passing yards are going up, but his rush prop is very high. So I think they do expect a lot of rushing from him. Rashad Bateman, obviously coming out of college, is a great talent, and he just happens to be on a team that is just not friendly to wide receivers. So Lamar Jackson's in a contract year. He's betting on himself. He doesn't have an agent. There's no deal in place. Does that mean he's taking things a little bit like the safer route? He's not running as much. He's trying to find his receivers. And like you said, if he is trying to find his receivers, Bateman would be the number 2 option behind Mark Andrews. Part of me thinks that maybe that's the case. Maybe Lamar does not want to run as much, take as many hits. So I do think that he may have a more prolific passing season this year than ever because of the contract situation, but I don't think I'm going to run into drafts being like I have to target Rashad Bateman, because there's a really good chance you're going to have a lot of weeks like lower single-digit points with him.
Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is somebody that we have seen be very, very hot before, but he could end up being very, very mild. What is a mild Buffalo Wild Wings sauce? I mean,
there might just be mild.
It might just be mild. I mean, he might just be mild. It's tricky because he's the number 1 guy.
Sure.
But again, who is he playing with? And he has had that fasciitis thing. The most important thing is, though, when I think back to when they traded him and how he looked like he was stuck in purgatory. Mm-hmm. It was like a mugshot. He looks miserable. So even though he is the wide receiver 1 there, I would rather have even Darnell Mooney than Amari Cooper, even though Amari Cooper is the more talented receiver. It makes me very nervous.
Well, let me ask you this then. So there's still a few weeks left before the season starts. There is a very popular quarterback who may get cut if he's not traded. What happens if Jimmy G somehow ends up in Cleveland? Does that change anything at all for Amari Cooper for you?
Yeah, it does. Okay. I would take Amari Cooper where he's going at that point. I would not jump his ADP in any way. But yeah, I would feel more confident. After him, Elijah Moore, who I believe we talked about last week, really one of the most talented receivers out there as far as pure raw talent. It's just a matter of putting it together. Who's going to be his quarterback? What's up with Zach Wilson? And then we're coming to Michael Thomas. Okay. Michael Thomas. Okay, here we go. Here. Now, I'm going to give you guys my comparison now. Michael Thomas is somebody that was Carolina Reaper. He was. 2019, nobody could beat this guy. And his ADP has fallen to where maybe he's a value. But here's the thing. Even after they announced he had a hamstring injury this week, his ADP still isn't changing. I think people are holding on so much to the ghost of Michael Thomas. I know he's having a great camp. I do not trust him. This guy is going to end up lemon pepper. I'm telling you, he's going to end up lemon pepper. He's not right in the head. I don't care how talented he is. There is a no way, no how I am putting Michael Thomas on any single one of my fantasy football teams. And you can say, oh, how much value? There are people that were drafting him in the 15th, 16th rounds being like, well, nothing to lose. That's true. You didn't have anything to lose, but did he pay off for you the last few years? No, he's not right. I just can't do it.
I'm with you. I think it's everything you said. I agree with. There's too many guys I like going around where he's being drafted. I think he's getting picked off of name value. There's too many question marks. I know we kind of talked about this last week with the coaching change from Sean Payton to Dennis Allen, and obviously the move from Breeze to now Jameis Winston and how much he trusts that. Michael Thomas, to me, now you said the hamstring. Now there's like a wrist injury there as well. He's not going to play a full season. Like I just don't see him playing a full season at all. And if he does play, he's not going to be effective as he was with Drew Brees there. I'm not going to say he's a total pass because if he does fall dramatically, of course you want to take him because he would be the clear-cut number one. But where he's going, I would not feel confident or comfortable taking Michael Thomas there.
Next guy up after him is Hunter Renfrow, who I really like, but I'm sort of avoiding right now because it's a little high for me, but Devontae Adams there and Darren Waller coming back, but certainly not a bad pick. But the next guy is the real reason why I would never drop Michael Thomas, because the next guy, everybody thinks about him like he's just kind of medium, but in reality, he's probably going to end up for you Nashville hot, especially if you play in a standard league. And that guy is Adam Thielen. Now, don't come to me with this like regression has to happen with touchdowns, because we said that last year. Guess what? It didn't happen. Adam Thielen is Kirk Cousins' favorite red zone target. He had 10 touchdowns last year in only 13 games played. And then you're going to say to me, oh, but what about Justin Jefferson? Yeah, what about him? There's no competition. Justin Jefferson also had 10 touchdowns last year, but in 17 games. So now you've got, Kevin O'Connell in town. You got Wes Phillips. You got all of this. There's going to be more air yards. They're going to be throwing more on early downs. But who's going to be taking the attention? Justin Jefferson. So who's going to end up with all those touchdowns? Once again, an incredible contested catch rate, a great wingspan. It's Adam Thielen. And if you get 10 touchdowns and even just 700 yards from him, yeah, even a PPR league, this is an incredible value where he's going. So I think it could be even better, to be honest, too. So I am not afraid that he gave you 700 yards and 10 touchdowns with only 13 games played. Now, of course, we're betting on health, but you know what? We're betting on health for all of these guys.
Oh, yeah, sure. Do you think, Jen, this is purely a value-based move, or do you think there's a real shot that Minnesota could have the most prolific, tandem, wide receiver tandem, like in this upcoming season?
I don't think that they could actually beat out a Higgins-Chase combo, and probably not a Judy-Sutton combo. However, it's possible. I know Adam Thielen's getting older, okay? I'm realistic about it, but there's not a tight end stealing stuff from them. I mean, Irv could be good, but, we saw Cooper Kupp's breakout season, and that's probably going to be Justin Jefferson, but that just opens up so many opportunities for Thielen, who's kind of like the forgotten man there. And let's not forget, before the last couple of seasons, he was really, really healthy. So just a couple of freak injuries, I think. I think that is a very, medium pick that's going to end up being a lot spicier.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
DeAndre Hopkins, we know he's going to miss games, so that's just all about how much you think he can give you on a per-game basis. I'm not that high. He actually didn't look that good last year, so I'm out even at that price. Devonta Smith, I rather like because everybody's so high on A.J. Brown. that now Devonta Smith seems like a good value to me. Drake London, the clear number 1 rookie in Atlanta. Brandon Ayuk, we talked about last week, is someone we like as a later target. Christian Kirk, probably the number 1 in Jacksonville. If you believe in Trevor Lawrence, that's your spot. Tyler Lockett. I don't know, guys. I just can't do it. I want to. I just can't.
Seattle's the quarterback mess, like we were talking about, it does not bode well. They need to figure out something there. They're there to tank. They're there to tank. They're in the running to be the worst team in the NFL, I think. Maybe the Bears, if not the Seahawks. But it's just their best case scenario is to unfortunately trade away DK Metcalf for some picks, let Lockett finish his time there in Seattle, draft a new guy, and start the regime all over again, because it's as brutal as it can be. And it's a sorry ending to a great career for Tyler Lockett.
It is. Kadarius Toney, what do you think? Because Daboll's out here saying everybody's got to earn their spot on the roster. Maybe it's not Kenny Galladay he's talking about. And you want to talk about head cases.
Well,
so much talent. But.
Toney was the other guy I was thinking with. And this is more of like there's a few factors with this guy, and it's because of the depth. First of all, you draft a guy in the second round, Wan'Dale Robinson. You're going to use him. Sterling Shepard just came back a few days ago, completely healthy. Like I said, we have Galladay signed to a massive contract. You had Toney, and then you have Darius Slayton. So you have a bunch of guys there. I do think the Giants are going to pass the ball a lot more than they have. If you have a Brian Daboll, Mike Kafka offense, that's just what they do. They just throw the ball a ton. I think the Giants are prorated to like the 6th most passing attempts. So that's good if you like Kadarius Toney. Now, obviously, there comes in the other parts of him sometimes being a knucklehead. How much is that on the last regime? Maybe he just didn't really mesh well with Joe Judge. I know he was a David Gettleman draft pick. This is now Joe Shane's team, so that could be a thing where they're like, yeah, we don't really need this guy anymore. But there's a flip side where he showed you last year that how great he was in like the 10, 11 catch game. He's explosive. He could be the Giants version of a Deebo Samuel. So I think he's a guy that I wouldn't draft him. I wouldn't reach for him. Definitely not. Where he's going, I'm not sure if I would feel comfortable taking him there. You can't draft him and start him and be like, I have full faith in him. Now, 6 games in, I may look like a total idiot, but I just don't see Toney being the number 1 focal point of the passing offense. I actually think that Wan'Dale Robinson is going to be great, and I think Sterling Shepard, who's their best route runner, if he's healthy, he's going to be Daniel Jones' guy. And Daniel Jones also loves a couple years back, Darius Slayton was his deep threat. So those are the guys he kind of has like a rapport with, and they drafted Wan'Dale for a reason. And I need Toney to have an impact before he could really believe in this. I think if anything, next year will be the year where we could kind of trust Toney as a legitimate receiver. But right now, from everything I've read and watched and listened to with the Giants, like there's no reason to. He's just part of a big group of guys they have on offense.
Going after Toney is Alan Lazard, who is probably the number 1 guy in Green Bay. So, like, comparatively, would you rather have Lazard or Toney there?
Not even close for me. It's Lazard. He's the number 1. He's playing with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers' entire career built receivers that nobody knew about. That's just an easy pick.
And then next up is Russell Gage. And Roday was talking about Gage. He has moved so much. Like, he was an early sleeper pick for people. Then he went down with Julio Jones, then back up because, Mike Evans hamstring him. Then Tom Brady wasn't in camp. Now he's fallen back down a little bit again because of this undisclosed leg injury. So he's going as late as, pick 100, pick 110. I'm kind of in there. I mean, I feel like, this is the offense that threw for the most yards in the league last year, 5,229 yards. Any piece of that, Gronk is gone. And we got an injured Godwin. Julio Jones is kind of old. Mike Evans might have a hammy thing here and there. I feel like, it's worth a shot there. It's late enough. Robert Woods next up. Obviously, we talked about him as well. Mm-hmm. Treylon Burks, we talked about him as well. They're going at the same spot. I would rather have Robert Woods.
I'm with you on that, 100%.
Rookie Chris Olave, we mentioned, very talented, worth taking a shot on. And here we got Chase Claypool, which we discussed. We discussed George Pickens versus Chase Claypool. They're basically going now within the same round in most leagues because Pickens has rocketed so far up the draft board. So it's either way too high on Pickens or too low on Claypool, or maybe not. Maybe there's enough to go around, but we don't know who the quarterback is. So pick your poison. Roday gave the reasons for Pickens, which I really like. I also really like Chase Claypool because I think they can get creative with him and use him in a rushing way too. Some interesting packages should they so choose. So that's an interesting one.
I do like Chase Claypool, and this is not my Notre Dame bias speaking, but just he's obviously Pickens, the rookie, did deal with a lot of injuries at Georgia. He's also a big body, so they're both bigger receivers that can get those jump balls. I think that's kind of what made Claypool shine a few years back when you had Big Ben, who was just like, I'm just going to toss
it. He doesn't need to. Have you noticed this? He jumps just because he wants to jump, and it's a little bit weird, and I can see why that would be concerning for people. Sorry.
But I could also see Claypool being this kind of safety blanket of sorts for whoever the quarterback is. If that's Trubisky, who doesn't have a full grasp of the offense. If that's Kenny Pickett, who's obviously a rookie and just learning the game. So I do like Claypool. I also... we're kind of hypocrites, not me and you, but just in general, of people who watch preseason football, and you see some big performances, you buy in way too much, and then you see some bad performances, you're like, oh, I'm out on that guy. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if George Pickens doesn't have a couple nice games, then this is not even a conversation. So I think preseason, obviously, you want to see the players you draft perform well, but I don't think it means you have to give up on other guys like Claypool. So I still would feel more comfortable with Claypool, but I think Pickens is going to have a fine career.
So in Dynasty leagues, he's my favorite Dynasty pick right now. Olave is also up there, mm-hmm. but I really like Pickens in Dynasty because I think he has the opportunity to grow with his quarterback.
Sure.
Whereas I think Olave, Doubs, Watson, all of those could see quarterback changes even in the near future. So I kind of like that it could be Pickett and Pickens, and they seem to have chemistry already. So that's just kind of my thought on that. We have got only a few minutes left. So what I want to do is, first of all, if you're watching this right now, there's time. Hit us with questions. That's what we're here for. Get your questions in. But I do want to talk a little bit about some of our late round targets, because that's a lot of times where a draft is made. And that's my favorite part is like, so how I like to build is to get a pretty, sometimes boring team up front, right? Kind of boring, kind of solid, and then take those shots later on these high upside people. And that's what a lot of these people are going to be. One of my favorite late round wide receivers, Rondale Moore. We know DeAndre Hopkins is out for a while. We saw Kyler Murray put on the headset and call offensive plays for 2 touchdowns, and Cliff Kingsbury didn't have that luck. So, hey, maybe it's working. I would love to see Rondale Moore being used creatively. He's a fun one. Isaiah McKenzie looks like he might actually be getting that slot receiver job in Buffalo. We all thought it might be Jamison Crowder, but McKenzie's looked great. And who doesn't want a piece of that Buffalo offense? He's going as late as pick 154. So you're getting him 12th, 13th round. And then finally, Alec Pierce, who's also looked really good in preseason. Yes. And I think he could be that big-bodied receiver across from Michael Pittman. The longer that the Colts go without signing a veteran, the more confident I feel that Alec Pierce might emerge somewhere in this season as a pretty good threat. And I am expecting good numbers from Matt Ryan, as we've talked about. So give me a couple of your guys.
I know we're short on time, so I'll throw one that I really I'm in love with. And my Twitter feed, I have a lot of Boston related stuff just from my time in school there and interning there. So I see a lot of Patriot stuff in practice, and I kind of sift through it. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't really buy into Belichick. Who knows what the season's going to be? The one guy that I see a lot of comments about is Jacoby Myers. And I was reading stuff like Mac Jones just came out and said, like, he's one of my best friends in the team. I wanted to be a Patriot with me forever. Like, that right there is huge. Secondly, 126 targets last year. I think he had like 83 catches, by far the most in the team. The next closest person it was far away. I know they added some guys on offense, but there's something about a young quarterback who gets comfortable with the receiver, kind of like you're saying with Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. Mac Jones seemed to find his guy in Jacoby Myers, and I know that he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. I think he only had 2 last year, but the name of the game is targets and value, and where he's going, he's listed, or at least in Mac Jones' brain, he is their number 1 receiver. Where he's going, you're drafting other guys who may be the wide receiver 2 or even 3 on other teams. So getting Jacoby Myers there, I think, is huge, especially in PPR formats if he's going to go north of 80 catches again. So I really do love Jacoby Myers, even though the Patriots are very, very tough to figure out with what Belichick does.
I absolutely agree. I think Jacoby Myers is a great value right now, and he's got to have positive touchdown regression. I mean, that was just weird. Now that he's done it, he's got the nerves out. I think you're right. Other guys going late. It's interesting to me, Tim Patrick is still kind of going ahead of like Wan'Dale Robinson and Paris Campbell and Curtis Samuel and Isaiah McKenzie. It's very interesting. So you guys, you pay attention, look at these guys and look at recently where they've gone. Let me see. There's been some risers and fallers. A lot of the rookies are rising. And a lot of that you don't want to fall for. Because, Romeo Doubs had those 2 touchdowns, et cetera. Maybe he's going to get chances before Christian Watson, but there's still 3 other guys ahead of him. So you don't want to jump too much the ADP, and it's really easy to get tempted to do that.
Yeah, and another thing that I'll add is like look at just coaching styles and offensive styles, and I'll use my Giants again as an example. But like look at the Buffalo Bills teams with Brian Dable. They had Stephon Diggs for sure, but Cole Beasley in the slot was a big part of their offense. Everyone's like, why did the Giants draft a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson in the second round? It's like, well, because he's going to fill that role. So like that's what I'm saying. Like there's certain teams kind of give away what their game plan is and what they want to do. So if you could like watch your team, find out stuff like that, that will definitely help you in your drafts. We have
and that's why you'll hear us talk about things like, the offensive coordinator for the Rams is now in Minnesota. Let's think about, they do lots of 3 wide sets. Okay, maybe KJ Osborne's a thing. I don't actually really think KJ Osborne is a thing, but that's a kind of thought you could have. Joined late, so you may have mentioned him, but thoughts on wide receiver on the Packers, specifically taking a flyer on Romeo Doubs. So we did talk about Romeo Doubs. He is, at this point, gone a little too high up in ADP for my liking. Let me look at my latest notes for where he is. He is at pick 143. I mean, it's not terrible, but that is up from 278. I do think he is ahead of Christian Watson right now, but as I was mentioning, I don't think we should expect anything right away, and he's probably someone you can get on the waiver wire, mostly because there are Watkins, Cobb, and Lazard in front of him, and also, what people I think are really discounting is how many passes Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon are going to be involved with. I think they're going to be really involved in the receiving game. So, yes, Aaron Rodgers did say that he had a different standard, meaning for Doubs, meaning that he was starting from a higher place. But that being said, Aaron Rodgers is going to spread the ball around. He likes who he likes. He was mad at his rookie catchers a few weeks ago. So I like Doubs, but I think maybe just don't jump the spot. Certainly don't take him before 143. I think you can probably get him on the waiver wire because somebody probably will take him and then he won't do enough for them the first couple weeks and they'll drop him.
That's the name of our show. Waiver Wired. Gotta be good on it. Yeah.
That's what we're going to be here for. Guys, during the regular season, we will be here on Thursdays at 4. Next week, we're going to record at a different time, but we will be here during the regular season. Thank you so much for listening. We'll hit some tight ends before the season starts, and then we're off to the races. We're going to help you set your lineups and answer questions and hopefully have more fun guests along the way as well. Eddie, any closing thoughts on wide receivers? There's so many of them. I could literally do like a month of podcasts just on receivers.
What I'll say is, a lot of quarterbacks wait on quarterbacks. Running backs are very scarce, especially the ones who are the bell cows, if there's even any of those. So pick those up. Receivers, to me, is really how you win this draft because not only you're going to have good depth, but there's so many guys. And like we had to have a second episode on wide receivers because there's so many good ones in the mid to late rounds. Even guys you could pick up off the waiver wire. So having good wide receiver depth, hitting the guys that just make the most sense on NFL teams' rosters to be on your fantasy team, like that's what you need to win your league. Because look, everyone's going to struggle at running back and everyone's going to have a good quarterback, but you have to win the league with the wide receivers. So hopefully this week's and last week's episodes help everyone to draft the perfect wide receiver team,
especially in PPR leagues.
Yes.
So pay a lot of attention. In the meantime, you guys have an awesome weekend. We're around. You have questions. Remember, we're here to answer them at Extra Points, at Jen Piacenti, at Edward L. Murphy. And don't forget to head over to the NFFC, make a donation to the V Foundation,
yes.
Or even better, sign up and play with me and Rode and Miz and Kofi Coleman and Liz Loza and Michael Fabiano and help us sack cancer. Don't forget to book your Buffalo Wild Wings draft parties. You get half off all your appetizers, and you got to use all our spicy takes. You can put them all together there, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.